I'm extremely happy to be here and to get to talk about quality and ethics. And you are going to see some repeated slides. I'm sorry for that, but I'll try to add upon them. But it feels great that Martin and I are telling a coherent story, at least. So, a bit about me. As Veronica, right? Victoria, sorry. As Victoria said, I've been in the industry for 20 years, and I'm currently the consultant manager at a company called Lemon Tree. And I'm also on the board of directors for the Association for Software Testing. But I started out as a developer, and I was a developer for 10-ish, 10, 12 years before I found my passion in testing. I'm also a speaker and a workshop facilitator, so if I could do this full-time, that would be awesome, but unfortunately I also have to have a salary. But I love stuff like visual modeling, finding patterns, games, but above all, good testing. And by good testing, I don't mean an army of test monkeys writing scripts, reporting number of past tests, code coverage, or how many bugs are found before production. I mean good testing. And good testing is not about writing test cases. Good testing is about assessing software with a critical mind and still being friends with developers afterwards. If I was a Spice Girl, I would be Grumpy Spice. So during my 20 years, I've seen the pendulum shift a lot. When I started, we were all software developers doing everything related to software development. In my first project in '99, I was a requirement analyst, I was a designer, I was an architect, I did front-end, back-end, database, I did testing, I did user training, and in the end, I packed the stuff up into a pretty bundle and shipped it on a disk. Then about 10 years later, we were all specialists. So we had found our different passions. So some of us were really passionate about user experience, and they worked full-time with that. Some of them loved working with the users to find out what they actually needed, and those became requirement analysts. We had architects, we had testers, and we still had a cross-functional team. And then I think you all agree with me that the tide has shifted. So we are back to stuff like comb-shaped competences, T-shapes, icicle-shaped, basically all the shapes. And I'm going to get back to that. But I just want you to know that I've seen these shifts before. And I don't think we've seen the last shift. So I want to start the real talk part of the talk with telling you a story about a team. We can call them anything you like, because it's not important. But the team exists of Ian, who is a junior developer, new to the team, really struggled to find that first developer job. Bit unsure, but actually a really good coder. We have Sam. Sam is a senior, loves trying out new tools. His passion is being on the edge of technology. We have Alex, who is more of a business analyst, really enthusiastic and energetic and loves working with the developers, which is awesome, right? So he pairs a lot. We have Morgan, who's our tester. Really, really good tester, but has been brought up with the mindset that testers aren't responsible for the quality of the software. Someone else makes the decision. I just give them the information. Kim is our project manager. Loves taking risks. Loves the smell of a conflict in the morning. He threads the steering board rooms with confidence. And related to the team, but not in the team, we have Chris, who's our actual user. So I'm going to walk you through a chain of events that is fictional, but I've seen it all happen, so it could have happened. Ian has been given a task to fulfill in the team. The team decided it was easy. It was a useful functionality, but it was pretty harmless. So a good thing to start learning about the software. Unfortunately, Ian doesn't really understand the specification or the user story. And after asking a few times and getting not the details that she needs, she's a bit too scared about losing her job. So she decides to just go with the interpretation that she finds is more reasonable. So the implementation of this functionality is slightly off. It's harmless, it's no big deal, but it's still a bit wrong. Next up, we have Sam. And Sam picks a more complex task, because he's realized that if he does this, he can try out this new cool library that he found. But then, as sometimes happens, it's not as easy to implement as he thought. So time flies, and in the end, he has to backpedal and implement a kind of quick and dirty solution in the old tools. So we end up with technical debt. As I said, Alex loves to pair. And Alex and Sam are really on the agile bandwagon, and they've decided that face-to-face communication and pairing is the way to go. So they are working on a task, and they, while working on it and discussing it, they find out, they come up with this really cool solution that would really help the users use the systems better. So of course, they implement it, but they forget to tell anyone else. Because we're not supposed to document, right? That's waste. So in the end, they end up with a perfect solution, but none of the other team members know about it. So they think the system works differently than it actually does. Q Morgan, our tester, he's been doing an awesome job on the project. But a few weeks before release, he finds something that makes his spider sense tingle a bit. So he goes to the project manager, Kim, and he talks about it. And they talk it through, and they realize that, nah, it's just an edge case. This is not going to happen in real life. So Kim convinces Morgan that they'll just leave it for the next release. So the actual bad bug is not fixed. And not only that, but Kim makes a decision not to tell the steering group about this. Because telling the steering group means he risks delays of the project or even cancellation. So the bad bug is not only not fixed, it's released into production. All of these decisions were pretty small and harmless, and I'm sure you've all seen them happen in real life. What actually happens is that Chris, our user, she uses the system, her data is leaked, and not only that, she of course uses the same username and password on different sites. So her identity is completely stolen. Does this sound like a stretch to you? No. This happens. Just because our software is harmless doesn't mean that people can use it for bad. So back to the Boeing that we talked about before. Not only were the engines moved, which made the plane unbalanced, which made them install this software, they also didn't really train the pilots, as he said. And what this means is that the pilots had an airplane that behaved in a way that they didn't understand, so they couldn't correct it. This decision was made by the authorities, that the pilots didn't have to do the retraining. It wasn't Boeing who decided it. Someone outside decided that the risk of not training the pilots was low enough to justify the savings. There was also a warning light that was optional. So Boeing sold a solution with an actual warning system that the clients had to pay more to get. And to add even more, we had the FAA, the authorities related to the aircrafts. They rushed the approval of this airplane. They pushed their engineers to approve the airplane. And Boeing has been, well, this is what I've read from the investigation, so I hope I'm not lying here. But you can see that Boeing has been handing in safety assessments that is telling lies. So a number of small decisions, just as in our team, led to hundreds of people dying. Airbus, the competition, this is just find this really amusing, so I put it in there. They have a particular version of their aircraft that needs to be rebooted every 6 days because there's an internal clock that's slightly off. And it's cheaper just to reboot it than it is to update it, because later models have a fix. So you can fix it by just turning it off and on again. Another example, which is my favorite, so I always use it, so I hope people aren't tired about it yet, is the Mars Climate Orbiter, where one part of the software was built by Lockheed Martin, and they used the Pound system. And the rest of the software was delivered by NASA using the requirement-specified metric system. $330 million projects down the drain. Who do you think NASA blames for this? Anyone? They blame themselves, because they should have had checks in place. I'm going to skip that because I don't think we have time for that. Have you heard about the 1177 Vårdguiden, the calls? How could this happen? So we have one company, 1177. They use another company for handling the calls. That company uses another company for calls on uncomfortable hours. That company is owned by a Swedish organization, but it's actually been outsourced to Thailand. That company uses another company for actually storing the calls. And that company connected a NAS disk to the internet without encryption. Millions of calls with sensitive data was available without any hassle if you only knew the IP address. During the investigation, they found calls from another company in Uppsala handling the ambulance calls. They hadn't even ordered those calls to be stored, so they didn't know about it. So not only do we as developers need to know how to develop our software, we also need to be aware that other people are buying the software without even knowing about software. Because this can happen. So in Örebro, they had a machine checking the blood pressure and heart rates. And during a routine procedure, that machine froze. In this particular case, it wasn't a big deal. The patient got nauseous and fainted. The machine froze, and, well, he or she will have to redo the procedure, but no one died. But they could have. Because if this had been in a different situation, that person could have died from not having the blood pressure check. Not only that, they had bought software that couldn't handle Swedish characters. And they knew about it, and they still use it. So, as Martin, I was laughing a bit on the front end because he stole all my good slides. We have a code of conduct, and I don't think many of us know about it. So when I send out the slides, there will be a link, and I would really implore you all to at least look at it. So Fiona Charles from Quality Intelligence, she had put together a list of 10-ish commandments for ethical techies. So Fiona is working with testing, as am I, but this relates to all of us. Understand your basic professional obligations. What are the responsibilities of you as developers, or me as a tester, or even as a manager? What are my responsibilities as a manager? Know the legal or contractual obligations. I know GDPR and stuff is incredibly boring, and the documentation is really hard to read. And this WCAG accessibility, have you read that? But it's really, really important that you understand it, because how can you build software if you don't know the legal requirements behind it? But of them all, I think this is the most important. You need to know your bottom line. What are you okay with? Are you okay with not speaking up when you see someone making a mistake? Are you okay with Kim, the product manager, not raising the issue to the steering board? Because you need to understand whose interest you actually serve. For me, it's the end user. It's always the end user. I don't care if the client get upset, if my consultancy firm get upset. If I see something that will harm someone, there is not a single cell in me that could not tell. And I've lost jobs. But I stayed true to myself, and I think you should all figure out who your interests, what's important to you. Is it your company? Is it your team? Is it the end user? Is this the agile community? What matters to you? And know the harm your software can do. have a brainstorming session, sit down and figure out what's the worst thing that could happen. And it might seem like a stretch, but I promise you something like it will happen at one point of time. You don't have to go to all aliens come down and the planet will explode, but someone might use your leaked data and steal someone else's identity in another system. Because of this, you need to maintain awareness of your whole situation. Look above the little detail of what you're doing. We tend to get stuck in a little unit of code, but what's the bigger picture? How can this be used in a wrong way, connected with all of the other things in the infrastructure? And be good at saying no. It's okay to say no. They will push you, but it's still okay to say no. Because we need to actually speak the truth. Even if the people above us will try to push us to do something that goes against our moral bottom line. And know your escalation path. If you find something is slightly off, and you don't get the project manager to agree with you, how do you raise this issue? Do you have whistleblowing systems in place? Do you know who to contact to get attention? And as I said, I've lost jobs. There's always usually more jobs. But for someone else, as Ian, our junior developer, that might not be so easy. So I am very privileged in that I can always find a new job. But figure out what's worth losing a job for you. And document it. Paper trails, people. Or as Ben Simo said, I found this yesterday, so I just had to add it. Be socially and ethically responsible and think about things from many perspectives. Customers aren't your only stakeholders. Figure out all of them. So I'm going to go on a bit of an agile rant here, and I hope you won't hate me for it. But as Martin said, our business has a lot of issues. And I could take the easy way and say just hire more testers, but that won't solve it. Why are we delivering more, faster, cheaper? Have you heard of Thinking Fast or Slow? The book? So a lot of what he says in this book is really relevant to software testing. Because as humans, we are governed by two competing systems. One is fast, intuitive. It's cheap in sense of energy spent to make decisions. It's what you use when you look at someone and decide on the spot if they're happy or angry or sad. And on the other hand, we have a slow, intelligent system that's really not energy friendly to use. So we tend to not use it unless we have to. So if I would give you a complicated mathematical equation, that's the system you will switch to. But the fast system is what we use most of the time. And the more rushed we are, the more we will use that system. And that system is biased. And it's prone to simplify stuff. It will, if it can't figure out the solution to a question, it will just replace it with a simpler question and answer that one. It's the system that makes us like people because they are like us, or like someone else that we like, because it makes connection between things to lower the amount of energy it has to spend. If we're delivering software several times a day Do we have time to switch to the turtle system? I guess not, unless we have really good procedures in place, which we should have, and in that case, we should do it. But there are two aspects to this delivering faster. Are we delivering faster because we want to fail fast, learn, and carry on? Delivering more customer value, delivering small chunks with low risk, learning because we're doing something often? Or are we delivering often because we want to cut costs and deliver more? Being pushed by sales and marketing and managers. Does cross-functionality have to mean that we are all Swiss Army knives? Swiss Army knives are awesome if you're camping, because you don't want to bring your entire tool shed to camp. But if you're building a house, do you want to use a Swiss Army knife? If we are building really complex software, do we want to use Swiss Army knives or do you want to use specialized tools? We need to find the balance. I'm not saying we should all go back to having that single tester, that single requirement analyst, that single front-ender, but I'm saying people can't do everything equally good. So figure out in what areas you need to have those specialists. I hear often that developers don't like context switching, right? Loss of productivity due to being have to go to a meeting, or someone asking you a question and you lose half an hour because you have to go back. Why do we think it's not a loss of efficiency to switch between mindsets? And I'm sure there are people out there who switch between developer, tester, analyzing user behavior, architecture, database, front end without breaking a sweat. I know I don't. I need to completely realign myself from when I build something to when I try to figure out what could be wrong with it. And it's exhausting to me. And if you are in that area where it's exhausting, this is just as much of a energy loss as it is being interrupted with meetings. And also, we are making some awesome technology today. And there's like libraries you can just pull in and you get all of these awesome things. I did a boot camp and there was we did an exercise where there were like colorful bubbles growing, and there was music, and you pressed a key, and there was like all of this funky stuff going on. And it was like 3 lines of code. It looked really, really cool, but I have no idea what it does. So we need to be like millions of developers more to meet the needs of the future. And part of solving that is making it more accessible to newcomers. So that's a good thing. The bad thing is that I think a lot of you don't understand the libraries you're using. So I'm so old that I had to figure out localization, holiday dates. Do you know how hard it is to code for the Easter day? The algorithm is just crazy. And when I speak to new developers about this, they just look at me and they're like, what? Visual Studio does that for me. Why should I care? And of course, it probably doesn't matter if you can't calculate Easter day, but if you don't know what the libraries you're pulling in does, how do you fix it when they don't do what you expect it to? So we need to find that balance between accessibility to newcomers, which is awesome. Speed, we want to deliver more to our customers, but also the mastery. I hear a lot that we need to be faster because we need to keep up with our customers because they expect faster and faster deliveries. And I want to ask you, is that true? Or are we as software developers actually pushing that behavior by giving them more and more changes? I don't know, but I think it's worth thinking about it. So to sum this all up, Boeing didn't happen because of one ginormous bad decision. It happened because they made a lot of small bad decisions along the way. You need to figure out how to be fast or slow for the right reasons. Don't deliver software fast just because someone wants to cut costs. Do it for the right reasons and put the proper safeguards in place. And know your bottom line. Where is the line that you won't cross for anything? I've started asking this in interviews. What's the one industry you wouldn't take an assignment in? For some people, it's obvious. They're like, oh, I would never work with gaming. And other people are like, what? I would never work with weapons. That's my one line. I could do most of the other stuff, but weapons I would never do. And I will never lie to a customer about the quality of something. And never, ever blame your bad decisions on someone else. Take responsibility for the actions and the decisions you make. It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. We all make them. But own up to them. And also never pressure someone else into making a bad decision. If you're in a team and someone is a bit hesitant about delivering and they're like, this doesn't feel good, don't pressure them. Talk to them and figure out why they are uncomfortable and then make the decision. Because you are responsible for your own actions. No one else is responsible for you. And I want to add, you are responsible for calling out if you see someone else making bad decisions. All of us will lie or hide truth or just take liberties with the truth for reasons that could be benevolent or malevolent. It could be to save our own skins. It could be because we want to protect someone. It could be because we don't feel the energy is worth it to speak up. But make sure those decisions aren't the important ones that end up with Boeing crashing. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Never quite know where to come on, do you? Thank you, Lena. We've now got time for some questions. If anyone's got any to ask, Lena. And this is Nigel. Ooh. And Nigel is this super cool, there we are, microphone that we can throw out to people. And this makes me happy because it's like sports. So if anyone has any questions that they want for Lena, speak now or forever hold your peace, and I will launch Nigel your way. Come on. No?
Very Swedish.
Very Swedish indeed.
I'll be around if you don't want to do it in front of the audience.
Nothing? Come on, I really want to throw this. Yeah!
Well done.
Sorry for the blood.
It's okay.
Hey.
Now, just one small question. What was the slide you skipped when you were giving examples?
Skolplattformen, have you heard of it?
Thought so.
I figured you would get bored if I was just doing more and more bugs, but do I have time for that?
You got loads of time.
So, Skolplattformen and 1177 is basically the same problem. People are buying software without knowing about software. Skolplattformen has had so many issues. They've had enormous amounts of bugs. Even after having actual users testing it, there were still blatantly obvious bugs in there. They built it modularly by buying different modules from different companies. And they've actually used companies that were already previously known to deliver bad software because money. They've had performance issues because they didn't do any load testing. Of course they didn't. Something that's going to be used by millions of people, probably don't test it with 5. But the big issue is the security. And in that case, Stockholm Stad, the city of Stockholm, they actually have requirements for security testing. But I can't see how the company actually did any security testing because it was very, very easy to get hold of all of the personal information of all of the students and all of the personnel. So don't work for those bad companies, and don't buy software unless you have someone with IT knowledge.
Anyone else? Launch.
So we've had a shift between generalists and specialists from time to time, and reading sort of between the lines a bit, do you think we're lacking a role in the future, sort of a formalized moral compass in the teams, or is that a role that you see would be more owned by the different actors, like the project manager, the product owner and stuff in the teams?
I think historically it's been me, or like the testers. So I think kicking out a lot of the testers has meant that we've lost a lot of the moral compass. And also the testers that are left aren't trained in good testing. So the testers that are there now are less of the moral compasses. But I would love for the theory behind it is that it's the team's responsibility, so everyone should be responsible for it. But I don't think we're there yet. So the autonomy and the mastery that we talk about in Agile, I see a lot of team not owning up to that. And until they do, we should have someone. I would love that title, moral compass. That's the job I want.
Anyone want Nigel?
Far back.
Don't aim for faces.
So as your example, in the team, there's so many people doing different things. So in reality, like for example, you're a tester or you work closer to the user, you experience more problems. In your mind, it's like there's all 1,000 possibilities things can go wrong because that's your role. So I would like to maybe you can give some insight of because you say that if you found something that go wrong, it likely going to go wrong, and from the tester or from the user testing perspective is true. But when you actually get that and try to borrow back in your team, that doesn't really work in reality because other people have more positive view of what they build because their role is different. So how would you barter this? Do you understand my question? How wrong enough that you would consider it is wrong and it would be unacceptable?
Risk management is something testers and developers should learn more about because it's after 20 years, it's a gut feeling. I'm kind of, this is important, this is not, and I just know it because all of the system one is doing all of the connections in my brain, and I can relate it to different things. I think the teams I've worked with, and I would almost like to ask Lynn, my colleague in the team, if I scream loud enough, they know it's important. So it's important for testers to not push for everything. And there's a different talk I do on bug advocacy that actually it's basically only around this area. How do you sell a bug to a developer or a product manager? Cookie-based delivery is an awesome thing from Alex Schlumberger, where she being a tester is a lot about relations. So if you have good relationships with your developers, they will trust you. And then if they don't, you just scream until they fix it anyway.
Thank you. Maybe you threw it.
Yeah, chuck him. Chuck Nigel.
Hi.
Hi.
Great. So I actually think you should have gone into the school platform because it's a really recent thing that it's local here. And that's about how to actually push people who are responsible for purchasing these systems into actually taking responsibility for the whole chain of purchasing to actually delivering the system. I read an interview about the school platform where one of the people behind purchasing, upphandling, I don't know the English word.
Yeah, well,
yeah. She said that we're generally good at purchasing software, but we really should be better at actually verifying that it works. And I don't know if they can claim that you're a good person to buy software if you always constantly buy the wrong software. So do you see any ways for, because I have 2 kids, and their personal goals have been fed into this system like 2 years ago, and due to the security flaws, all the teachers like, we can't follow up the goals that we set 2 years ago. I think it's laughable, but acceptable if they keep sending out the weekly letters to parents with email. But when it actually affects the school and the performance of the kids in the school, there should be some way of us as citizens to actually put these people, like, make them pay, sounds so. But do you see any way of us as people paying taxes and those taxes going into software, bad software like at Karolinska, where we can actually like say, no, we want to sue the city for not buying good enough software?
I think we would have to redo the entire political system a bit to fix it, because School Platformen was actually like 5 years between the decision to go forward with it and the go live. 5 years. So much happens in 5 years. It's unimaginable that it would take that long. I mean, we could have built that software faster. But I think we would have to redo this upphandlings rules. I don't know if you remember the time when we had 1 krona consultants, where a consultancy firm would sell consultants for like 1 krona. And everyone knew it wouldn't work. It would go over budget. So I think we've almost got rid of that, but now we have other issues. You have the escalators in Stockholm was the same problem. They bought something so far away from the time they actually implemented it, and no one looked at that the company actually had similar accidents in other countries. Because if they had, they shouldn't have installed them, of course. If they had looked at School Platform and they looked at the companies, they would have seen that this particular module was delivered by a company that had lots of complaints about the quality of the software. They shouldn't have even been allowed to offer. So I don't know, maybe we should start a political party and change the upphandling.
Good idea.
Anyone else?
If I can be the moral compass, I'm in the party.
Here? There.
Thanks for an interesting talk, first of all. So in the beginning, you talked about some problems that you had seen and this team and so on. And then you went on to talk about individual ethics and individual, like this moral compass and accountability and responsibility on us as individuals. So it sounds like that's the majority of the solutions or problems you have seen in your career. So is that it, or is that what you feel is too little talked about? Like, do you see any other solutions or like a bigger scale? Like, what environment fosters these better decisions to be made and so on?
The problem would be less if we had embraced the values that we say we embrace fully, because then the teams would take responsibility and accountability, and they would be allowed to have mastery and autonomy. Or if we stayed in the old way of doing stuff when we have the hierarchy, that also had benefits. But now we are in the middle, and a lot of individuals aren't comfortable stepping over to the other side. And a lot of management isn't allowing people to step over the other side. So we need to choose a side. And until we do, it's us as individuals. Or laws, we can do more laws.
I think there was a question over here.
Awesome.
I did it! Oh my God, my software. Okay. Some advice for the junior developers that feel they have to be the rabbit. They are afraid to say something about the ethic things in the companies.
So junior developers don't dare speak up. Was that the question, or?
Some advice that you want to say for the junior developers.
Teams should work a lot on psychological safety. My friend Gitte does an awesome talk about that. If a team that has been working together for a long time, they can use, if it hasn't been shifting a lot and they are autonomous and all of that, they can bring in juniors and they will make the juniors feel safe. And they will embrace and applaud juniors for speaking up. And if that's not the case in your team, you should do something about it. It's your responsibility, I think.
Any more? Oh, all the way at the back.
Thank you. Maybe not so much a question, but a comment.
Oh, my favorite.
Yeah, I do a lot of hiking, and sometimes when I hike, I use on the topic of the moral compass. So I use a compass often. And one time when I was hiking in Abisko, my compass was a bit off. It was not calibrated correctly, which ended me, in me losing my way until I figured it out. And then kind of drawing the analogy to, for example, yourself being a moral compass, or myself, or anybody in like a formal role. That I think brings a risk that if that person who's formally a moral compass, if their calibration is not right on point, then the whole effort kind of can go off track. So as a comment, I think nothing really beats the personal, constant recalibration of your own moral and ethical compass, because any number of external authorities on moral or ethics don't make up for a decision not to make a choice for yourself on a daily decision, granular basis. Thank you.
Other questions? Oh, launch, Nigel.
Okay.
All there. I see nothing. Ooh.
Hi. Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
As we talk quite a lot about the critical bugs that happen, and often we see that it's a chain of unfortunate events where all roles are kind of responsible to an extent. But the intuitive answer, whose responsibility is these software issues? Intuitive answer is quality assurance. Of course, we know it's not the only one who's truly responsible. But the question is, how do you see the role and responsibilities of QA team? And what you don't see as responsibilities of QA team?
First of all, I'm happy if there is one. But I think if we look at good testers, quality assurance, call it whatever you want, their responsibility is to be annoying from the start to the end. So ask all of the why, what, how, who from the start and throughout the chain, and to raise all of the risks that they see, and stand their ground if they are really, really worried about something. I don't think it's their responsibility to decide or approve. And if the team or the organization decides that they want that responsibility, they should also have the mandate to push it. But asking questions, being annoying, and raising all of the flags, but also to be friendly and helpful and work with the developers and not be like the bottleneck and just complain.
Was there one more question? All the way over there. Pitch it. Go on. Ooh. Did we get insurance for this?
Okay, hi.
Hi.
I've actually worked as a teacher, so I've come across school platformen, so to say. And you said the companies creating it were known for earlier work that wasn't so good. What's the name of these companies? Do you know?
It's available if you Google it.
Okay. Thank you.
It's very available if you Google it.
Okay.
Any more? Cool. Okay, thank you, Lena.
Thank you.
Yeah.